Have you ever noticed that some people seem completely unshakable, like nothing in this world can actually get under their skin, while everyone else is busy shouting, defending their honor, or reacting to every little piece of drama? These rare individuals move through life with a strange, quiet power that most people just don't understand. At first, you might think they're just being cold or acting like they don't care about anything. But if you look closer, you'll see that people actually start to treat them with a massive amount of respect and even a bit of caution. If you're enjoying this deep dive so far, smash that like button and let's keep going. Why does this quietness command so much room? What do these people know that the rest of the world is missing? It all comes down to one life-changing rule. The less you react, the less you explain, and the less you feel the need to respond, the more power you actually hold over your own destiny. But here's the crazy part. Most of us are literally handing our power away every single hour of the day without even realizing it. Think about Chapter 1, the power you give away every time you react. Every single time you let your emotions take the wheel because of something someone said, you are handing over a piece of your soul to them. It happens so fast. Someone makes a rude comment, and suddenly your whole mood is ruined. Someone leaves you on red, and your brain starts spinning in circles trying to figure out why. Someone shows you a tiny bit of disrespect, and you feel this burning itch to snap back, to prove them wrong, or to defend your name. In those moments, you aren't the boss of your own feelings anymore. You've allowed outside triggers to walk right into your mind and take over the controls. Reaction isn't just a simple reply. It is a literal transfer of your personal energy. The more you jump at every bait people throw your way, the less control you have over your own peace. Now, this is where it gets interesting. A person with a silent mind understands this on a deep level. Instead of hitting back instantly, they build a wall. They create a small pause, a tiny gap of time where their logic can step in before their impulses take over. In that quiet space, you start to see things for what they really are. You realize that most things in life simply do not deserve your energy. They don't deserve your focus, and they definitely don't deserve a reaction from you. When you stop reacting, you stop being a puppet, and that quietness eventually becomes your greatest weapon. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part, because we're about to look at Chapter 2, the trap of explanation. We often think that explaining ourselves is a sign of strength or clarity, but it's actually a hidden weakness that can destroy your confidence. On the outside, it looks like you're just standing up for yourself, but if you look deeper, explaining usually comes from a desperate need to be liked or validated. You want people to see your heart, to agree with your choices, and to understand your why. But here is the truth you won't believe. The more you try to manage how people see you, the more power you give them over your happiness. Every time you give an unnecessary explanation, you are training your brain to care way too much about what others think. Eventually, you stop making choices based on what is right and start making them based on how they will look to the crowd. The real tragedy is that no matter how well you speak, people will always see you through the lens of their own baggage and biases. Some will get it, and some will choose to judge you no matter what you say. When you keep explaining, you are fighting a war that has no end, and that struggle just drains your battery and clouds your vision. A silent mind accepts that being misunderstood is just part of the deal. It stops trying to fix every wrong opinion and chooses to be independent instead. You start to trust your own choices without needing everyone to nod their head in agreement, and you let your results do the talking instead of your mouth. When you finally quit over-explaining everything, you build a deep sense of peace inside, because you're no longer running after approval or trying to fix the way people look at you. If you're finding this helpful so far, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. As this habit of quietness takes root, something truly incredible starts to happen. Your confidence becomes something internal and steady. It's unshakable because it isn't built on whether other people get you or not. It's built on your own inner truth. But here is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at stillness as a form of power, an ancient art of saying absolutely nothing. True stillness is a level of self-mastery that most people will never actually reach. Why? Because they are always reacting, always talking, and always trying to fill every single quiet moment with some kind of noise. Silence feels awkward to them, so they hurry to answer, to justify themselves, or to prove a point. They don't even realize that every extra word they say actually makes their position weaker. A quiet mind knows that real power isn't about talking more, it's about knowing exactly when to stay silent. When you choose to be still, you aren't being weak or lazy. You are being very intentional. You are making a choice not to show your thoughts, your feelings, or your next move to people who haven't earned the right to see them. Now this is the crazy part. When you stay silent in moments where everyone expects you to blow up or react, you create a type of pressure that most people simply cannot handle. They start to doubt themselves. They begin to wonder what is actually going on inside your head. In that state of confusion, they usually end up revealing way more about themselves than you ever could have found out by arguing. This is how stillness becomes a form of dominance. It's not done through physical force, but through total self-control and awareness. You are no longer easy to predict, and if someone can't predict you, they can't control or manipulate you. Before we move on, make sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into these topics. A quiet mind watches everything without rushing to give an answer. It listens to the subtext, notices the tiny details, and understands the whole picture before doing anything. This lets you move with 100% clarity instead of being driven by messy emotions. When you finally do decide to speak, your words actually mean something because you haven't wasted them on nonsense. Over time, this builds a powerful presence where your calm energy is louder than any shouting, and your control becomes your biggest advantage in every room you walk into. But you won't believe what happens next, because people are constantly testing you. Every single day, in ways that are often hidden, people are checking your temperature. They aren't using formal tests, but small, sneaky moments that show how much control you really have over your own life. These tests don't come with a heads up. They show up as a rude remark, a text left unread, an unfair rule, or someone just trying to get a rise out of you. Most people fail these tests the second they happen because they don't even know they're being tested. They get angry, they try to defend their honor, they argue and explain themselves until they're blue in the face. In doing that, they show exactly where they are soft and how easily they can be pushed around. What feels like a normal reaction in the heat of the moment is actually a loud signal to everyone else. It tells them that your feelings can be messed with, your peace can be broken, and your behavior is easy to guess. The reality is that people are always watching how you handle the heat. Your reactions tell them the truth about who you are way more than your words ever will. When someone pushes your buttons, they aren't just being a jerk. They are, either on purpose or by instinct, checking to see how much power they have over your world. If you blow up, you've just shown them they own you. Which part of this has hit home for you so far? Let me know in the comments. Once someone realizes they can push your buttons, they actually start to own a piece of your mind. This is exactly why letting your emotions fly can be so risky. It's not that having feelings is bad, but when you let them explode without control, you're basically handing over a map of all your weak spots without even realizing it. But wait until you hear how a quiet mind handles this differently. It doesn't rush into a fight. It doesn't feel like it has to prove a point to anyone, and it stays far away from drama that doesn't matter. Instead, it just watches what's happening with total focus and stays rock solid, even when things get really intense. If you're finding this helpful, go ahead and hit that like button real quick. You see, being calm like this isn't a sign of weakness at all. It's actually the ultimate form of power because you are deciding who gets to see your inner world. When you refuse to react, you're taking away the prize that most people are looking for deep down. They want your focus, your energy, and a big emotional blow-up. Without that prize, their little test completely fails, and the person trying to mess with you usually just gets bored and moves on because there's nothing in it for them. Passing these tests isn't about winning a shouting match or looking tough with your words. It's about keeping a grip on yourself, no matter what kind of chaos is swirling around you. But here's the crazy part. When you stop reacting, you aren't even playing their game anymore. That is what makes you almost impossible to mess with. People can't figure you out. They can't guess what you're going to do next, and they definitely can't trick you into making a choice based on anger or fear. This creates a massive shift in how the world looks at you. Instead of seeing someone who just reacts to everything, they see someone who is steady, in charge, and totally unbothered. Make sure you hit subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss out on the next part of this. Over time, this mindset changes your whole life because you stop feeling like you have to answer every single thing that happens to you. You start being much more careful with your energy. You become more purposeful with what you do and way more aware of what actually deserves your time. Things that used to make you snap suddenly don't matter anymore, and people who used to control your mood suddenly lose all their power over you. This is the secret to passing every test without even trying. You aren't playing a game that needs an explanation or a comeback anymore. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Once you get to this level, your strength becomes something inside you rather than something you show off. You don't have to prove a thing to anybody because your self-control says everything for you. You aren't just reacting to life as it hits you. You're moving through it with a clear head and real discipline. In that state, you become someone who can't be shaken or manipulated, no matter what kind of mess you're dropped into. That leads us into the silence of the wise, and what the great minds of the past knew that we've all forgotten. There is a huge reason why the most powerful people in history weren't usually the loudest ones in the room. It's because they knew something the modern world has totally lost track of. Silence isn't just empty space. It is a form of awareness and a type of strength that you can't always see, but you can definitely feel when you're around it. Today, everyone tells you to talk more, post more, and react to everything like being loud is the same thing as being confident. But honestly, most of that noise just comes from people feeling shaky inside. They feel like they need to be seen or understood by everyone else just to feel okay. The truly wise people moved in a totally different way. They didn't talk just to fill the air. They spoke only when they had a real reason, and when they didn't, they stayed quiet without feeling like they had to apologize for it. A quiet mind knows that words aren't just noises coming out of your mouth. They are actually a form of energy, and every single word you waste just drains that power away from you. Think about it. When you talk without a plan, or when you explain things that don't even need to be explained, you are slowly making yourself weaker. If you're enjoying these insights so far, smash that like button to help more people find this wisdom. Every time you react to a situation that doesn't deserve your time, you are losing your own presence, and you don't even know it. The smartest people in history knew that saving your energy was the secret to everything. They knew that energy is the fuel for your focus, your clarity, and your self-discipline. They weren't staying quiet because they were empty-headed or had nothing to say. It was the exact opposite. They stayed silent because they learned to only say what was actually important. Because they held back so much, their words had a massive impact when they finally decided to speak. But here's the crazy part about how this works. Great minds also understood that being quiet lets you see way more than words ever could. When you are the one constantly talking, you aren't really watching anything, you aren't listening, and you definitely aren't learning anything new. But the moment you stop talking and just stay still, you start to see the tiny details that everyone else is missing. You start to see what people are actually trying to do, and you understand situations from a much deeper level. Silence makes your brain sharper. Instead of worrying about what you're going to say next, you are just there. You are watching, thinking, and understanding. This kind of awareness is a huge advantage in life because you aren't just reacting like a robot anymore. You are responding with total clarity only when it's actually needed. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Before we keep going, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the human mind. The wise also knew a secret that most people forget. Not every opinion needs an answer. Not every drama needs you to get involved. Most people feel this desperate urge to reply to every comment, to fix everyone else's mistakes, or to defend themselves constantly. They feel like they have to prove they are right, but that habit just traps them in a loop of stress and fighting. A silent mind breaks that loop. You learn to choose what gets your attention and what you should just ignore. This isn't about being scared or avoiding things. It's about having the discipline to know that your time is limited. Wasting your energy on things that don't help you grow is just pulling you backward. You won't believe what happens next when you actually start doing this. Silence creates a type of power that talking can never match. When you are calm and you don't let people bait you into a reaction, people start to feel that strength. Even if they can't explain it, they feel your stability. Your silence tells the world that you aren't someone who is easily pushed around. It shows you don't need other people to tell you that you're doing a good job. This earns you a level of respect that you can't get by acting tough. People will think twice before they try to test you. It's not because of anything you said, but because your actions showed them that you can't be shaken. Over time, living like this completely changes how you see the world. You won't feel that annoying itch to speak just so people notice you. You won't react just to feel like you're in control of a situation. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. Instead, you move with a real plan. You speak only when it serves a purpose, and you stay quiet when silence is the strongest move you can make. This balance is exactly what the wise mastered, and it's what almost everyone in our modern world is missing. When you start doing this in your own life, you'll feel a shift that is quiet but incredibly strong. Your brain gets quieter, your thoughts get sharper, and your actions get more accurate. You stop throwing your energy away and start building it into something solid that nobody can mess with. This is the true power of the wise. Which part of this surprised you the most? Drop a comment below and let me know. It is not a silence born from being weak or scared, but a silence that comes from pure strength, deep awareness, and total self-control. Once you truly get this, you start to see that the less you feel the need to talk, the more power you actually hold over your life. But here is the crazy part. Most people think this kind of power is just something you're born with. It's not. Chapter 6. Building the Fortress. Daily Habits of an Unbreakable Mind. Having a mind that won't break isn't something that just happens to you, and it doesn't show up overnight because you had one big realization. It is something you have to build slowly and on purpose. You do this through daily actions that most people ignore because they look too simple to actually work. If you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button and let me know you're with me. The real truth is that mental strength isn't built in those huge, dramatic moments. It's built in the tiny, repeated choices you make every single day that shape how you think, how you react, and how you move through the world. Every time you decide to pause instead of lashing out, every time you stay quiet instead of over-explaining yourself, and every time you choose logic over a sudden impulse, you are laying down another brick in the fortress of your mind. Over time, these bricks create a structure so solid that no outside problem can easily knock it down. Now this is where it gets interesting. The very first step in building this mental fortress is awareness. Without awareness, you can't change a single thing about yourself. Most people spend their lives on autopilot. They react to things without thinking, they speak without any real purpose, and they let their emotions drive the car. They never stop to notice their own patterns or question why they react the way they do. They don't even realize that most of what they do is just a habit, not a choice. Make sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next step in this process. A silent, powerful mind starts by watching itself. It notices thoughts as they pop up. It feels emotions as they start to grow, and it recognizes the exact split second before a reaction happens. This awareness creates a tiny gap between what happens to you and how you respond. In that small space, you suddenly have the power to choose a better path. The second daily habit is the discipline of the pause. It sounds easy, but it is incredibly life-changing when you actually do it. When something makes you angry or upset, your brain wants to react right away. You want to defend yourself or explain your side. But if you can train yourself to just stop for a few seconds, you break that automatic cycle. In that short pause, your feelings start to cool off, your head gets clearer, and you stop acting on pure impulse. But here's the kicker. This tiny habit, when you do it every day, actually rewires your brain. It teaches your mind that not every event needs you to jump in immediately. Eventually, this pause becomes your new normal, and your reactions become slower, smarter, and much more intentional. Another huge piece of the puzzle is cutting out the extra noise in your life. A loud, busy environment always leads to a loud, messy mind. If you are always buried in distractions, constant talking, social media, and everyone else's opinions, your brain never gets a chance to rest. You become jumpy, distracted, and addicted to constant excitement. Building a mind that won't break requires you to find moments of real silence. You need times where you aren't scrolling, aren't talking, and aren't reacting to anything at all. In those quiet moments, your thoughts start to organize themselves, your heart rate slows down, and you finally start to really know your own mind. You also have to turn down the volume on your internal noise. This usually shows up as overthinking and those endless arguments you have with yourself in your head. Most people waste half their day replaying old conversations, imagining fake scenarios, or stressing about things that haven't even happened yet. You won't believe how much energy this drains from you. Which of these habits do you think is the hardest to master? Drop it in the comments and tell me why. All this non-stop mental noise just sucks the energy right out of you and kills your ability to focus. Having a silent mind means practicing the art of letting those thoughts drift away instead of feeding them more fuel. You have to realize that not every single thought popping into your head actually deserves your time or attention. By choosing to step back and not engage with all that junk, you build a sense of inner peace that gets tougher and tougher over time. But here is the crazy part that most people miss. You have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. This is exactly where most people snap and lose their cool. They feel this desperate need to explain their side, fix someone else's opinion, or make sure everyone sees them in a perfect light. If you're enjoying these tips so far, smash that like button to help more people find this. The truth is, that habit of explaining yourself keeps you trapped in a loop where you depend on others to feel good about yourself. Building a truly bulletproof mind means accepting that people are going to get you wrong. They will judge you and form opinions that aren't even close to the truth, and you have to be totally fine with that. When you stop trying to control what's going on in other people's heads, you lift a massive weight off your own shoulders. That freedom is what makes your inner world stable. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because none of this works without consistency. Doing this once or twice won't change your life. You have to use these rules every single day, in small moments, during annoying conversations, and even when you're feeling stressed out. The more you do it, the more natural it feels, until it doesn't even seem like hard work anymore. Your brain starts to default to being calm instead of just reacting. You choose silence over long explanations and stay in control instead of acting on a random impulse. This is when your mental fortress really starts to grow. It's not something you have to force, it just becomes a part of who you are. While you're on this journey, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this training. Another huge piece of this puzzle is emotional endurance. This is the skill of feeling big emotions without letting them drive the car. A lot of people think being strong means being a robot with no feelings, but that's just wrong. True strength is feeling every bit of the fire and still staying in control of what you do. When you get angry, you don't just lash out. When you feel frustrated, you don't let it ruin your day. And when stress hits, you don't let it hijack your brain. You build this endurance by choosing control over reaction over and over again until you stay steady even when things get intense. You also make your mind stronger by setting your own internal rules. Without these standards, you just get tossed around by whatever is happening around you. You have to decide ahead of time that you won't react wildly, you won't explain yourself when it's not needed, and you won't give your energy to things that don't matter. This creates a plan for your life that guides you even when your feelings are screaming. After a while, these rules become your identity, and you just act this way naturally. As this fortress gets bigger, you'll notice that people can't rattle you anymore. They can't predict you or push you around. Your silence will start to mean more than 1,000 words. This isn't magic. It's just the result of the hard work you're putting in. Eventually, nothing on the outside will be able to shake you because your power comes from the inside. Things that used to mess with your head just don't hit the same way anymore. People who used to push your buttons suddenly lose all their power over your mood. You'll find yourself becoming way more focused and disciplined, staying true to your own path. This happens because you're no longer wasting your precious energy on pointless arguments or trying to explain yourself to people who don't care. If you're finding this helpful so far, do me a huge favor and hit that like button right now. Building an unbreakable mind isn't some overnight miracle. It's a daily grind of staying aware and keeping yourself in check. It takes a ton of patience and staying consistent, but the payoff is a level of inner toughness that nobody can mess with. When your mind gets this strong, you stop just reacting to life and start actually leading it. You become that person who stays cool when the pressure is on and stays steady when everything else is falling apart. But here is the crazy part that most people miss. Chapter 7. The Life That Waits on the Other Side of Silence. There is a whole different way of living waiting for you that most people will never even see. It's not because it's a secret or impossible to reach, but because most people never develop the self-control needed to get there. This better life sits right on the other side of silence. It's waiting for you once you move past that constant urge to react, that annoying need to explain your every move, and the habit of jumping every time something happens around you. Most people spend their whole lives in a storm of emotional noise. Every little thing ruins their day, every random opinion gets under their skin, and every situation drags them in a million directions. But when you finally step into silence, you leave that chaos behind. It's not that your problems just vanish into thin air, but those problems no longer have a grip on you. That one shift changes your entire world. Now this is where it gets really interesting for your brain. When you start mastering silence, the very first thing that shifts is how you deal with your own thoughts. You won't feel overwhelmed by your mind anymore. You'll stop falling into those deep holes of overthinking and quit reacting to every single emotion that pops up. Before we keep going, make sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you never miss out on these insights. Instead of being trapped, you start watching your thoughts from a distance. Think of them like clouds passing by in the sky rather than orders you have to follow. This gives you a level of mental clarity that most people can't even imagine, because your head isn't filled with junk anymore. Making big decisions actually gets easier. It's not that life gets simpler, but your thinking becomes sharp and focused. You start seeing things exactly as they are, without adding layers of drama or stress on top of them. You won't believe how much your emotions change too, because silence brings a deep sense of stability. When you quit reacting to everything, your mood stops swinging back and forth like a pendulum. You won't be riding those crazy highs and lows based on what someone said about you or how a situation turned out. Instead, you build a steady inner peace that stays the same no matter what's happening in the world outside. This doesn't mean you turn into a robot with no feelings. It just means your feelings don't run the show anymore. You still feel things, but you don't let those feelings dictate what you do. This creates a calm foundation that stays solid 24/7. Your relationships start to change in a massive way too. When you stop over-explaining and reacting to every jab, people start looking at you with a new kind of respect. The people who used to love baiting you or getting a rise out of you will give up because they have nothing to hold on to. At the same time, people who actually value peace and strength will be drawn to you because you feel like a safe, grounded person to be around. Which part of this shift sounds the most life-changing to you? Let me know in the comments. You stop pulling in drama and start pulling in respect. This doesn't happen because you're demanding it or being bossy, but because your own actions naturally build it. Silence actually works like a filter. It clears out the messy, useless connections in your life while making the deep, meaningful ones even stronger. But here is where it gets really interesting. Think about how you use your energy. Before you found silence, your energy was probably all over the place. You were wasting it on quick reactions, heated arguments, endless explanations, and thoughts that didn't even matter. You were throwing away your mental and emotional fuel on things that gave you nothing back, leaving you feeling totally drained and blurry. If you're nodding along to this, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into self-mastery. Once you truly embrace silence, you start saving that energy. What used to be wasted is now ready for you to use on growth, focus, and your real purpose. You begin putting your power into things that actually move the needle in your life, your big goals, your daily discipline, and becoming a better version of yourself. This shift by itself can change your whole life path, because energy, when it's focused like a laser, becomes true power. But wait until you hear about the independence you gain next. As you walk this path, you stop leaning on other people to keep you emotionally stable. You don't need a constant stream of texts to feel safe. You don't need likes to feel confident, and you definitely don't need someone else's okay to feel sure about your choices. This isn't about being lonely or isolated. It's about being free. It is the power to stand tall on your own, no matter who stays or who leaves. You actually start to like your own company, your own ideas, and your own journey. This self-reliance becomes one of the strongest weapons you have. Now, this is where things take a crazy turn. Silence actually makes your brain sharper. When you aren't busy reacting or talking over everyone, you start to see things that most people totally miss. You start spotting patterns in how people act. You understand what's really going on behind someone's words, and you can see a situation coming long before it actually happens. This awareness lets you move through the world with a level of smarts and precision most people never get, simply because they are too distracted by their own noise. You aren't just a player in the game anymore. You're the observer who understands the rules and navigates with total clarity. Over time, who you are at your core begins to change. You aren't that person who gets triggered easily or feels the need to explain every little thing. Instead, you become someone who is cool, collected, and moves with purpose. This new version of you isn't an act or something you're faking. It's who you naturally become through practice. And once this identity locks in, it's almost impossible for the outside world to mess with you. Your strength isn't based on what's happening around you anymore. It's rooted deep inside. The most incredible part of this whole change is the deep peace that follows. It's a peace that doesn't care about the outcome or what people think. It exists because your mind isn't fighting itself anymore. You've stopped chasing people, stopped fighting to be understood, and stopped jumping at every little spark. This peace is solid and real. Once you feel it, you'll realize how much stress you used to create for yourself. Eventually, silence isn't just a tool you use, it becomes your identity. Your presence is calm, your mind is sharp, and your moves are exact. You move through life without the noise, without the waste, and without letting anyone else hold the remote to your emotions. This is the life waiting for you on the far side of silence. It's a world of pure clarity, steady ground, and a kind of inner toughness that most people will never actually find. Why? Because they can't seem to let go of the need to react, to explain themselves, or to always have a response ready. But wait until you hear this. When you finally step into this way of living, you'll realize something that shifts your entire reality. You'll see that real power was never about bossing others around or controlling the room. It was always about mastering yourself. Once you have that kind of self-control, nothing outside your own mind has the power to mess with you anymore. That is the exact second you truly become unbreakable. If you're finding this helpful so far, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. Now we move into Chapter 8. The final level, where you no longer feel the need to prove a single thing. There is a specific point in this journey where something deep inside you shifts so much that it changes your entire perspective. It's not because the world suddenly got better, but because you finally stopped needing the world to see you or understand you. This is the ultimate stage of a quiet mind. It's a place where you don't feel that burning itch to react or explain yourself. You aren't just forcing yourself to stay quiet through gritted teeth. You genuinely don't see a reason to speak up anymore. The fights that used to feel so big and important now look totally meaningless. The opinions that used to keep you up at night lose all their weight, and the drama that used to trigger you just doesn't have a grip on your mind anymore. But here is the crazy part that most people miss. Most people spend every waking hour trying to prove something to someone. They want to prove they are right, prove they are worthy, or prove they are successful and strong. This constant need to show off or be right creates a hidden, heavy pressure that keeps the mind in a state of total chaos. No matter how much they win, it never feels like enough. There's always one more person to impress or one more comment to fix. But when you hit this level of inner mastery, you see that the need to prove anything was the very thing keeping you in a cage. The moment you drop that heavy bag, your mind becomes light, fast, and incredibly powerful. If you want to keep leveling up your mindset like this, hit subscribe and tap that bell. At this high level, being silent isn't a trick or a tactic anymore. It's just who you are. You aren't staying quiet to look tough. You're quiet because you actually are tough. You don't feel like you have to explain your life because you trust your own choices 100%. You don't feel the need to jump into the fire because you aren't emotionally hooked on what's happening around you. You don't respond because you finally realize that most things simply don't deserve your time. This isn't about being cold or ignoring people. It's about having total clarity. It's the skill of seeing what actually matters and letting everything else slide by without feeling bad about it. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, especially when it comes to how you handle conflict. In the past, a fight would suck you right in. It would trigger your feelings and make you want to defend your honor or win the argument. But now, you see conflict in a totally different light. You realize that a fight only exists if you decide to show up for it. Most of the time, you just choose not to show up. You understand that getting into a pointless argument is just a massive waste of your energy, and energy is something you now guard like a hawk. This doesn't mean you run away from every single challenge. It means you pick your battles with extreme care. When you do decide to step in, you do it with a cold, calm focus, not with messy emotions. Another big shift happens in how you look at the people around you. You stop expecting them to act a certain way just so you can feel okay. You simply accept that people are going to act based on their own personality, their own level of maturity, and their own personal limits. Instead of trying to fix them, change their minds, or react to every little thing they do, you just watch them and decide how much space you want to keep between you. This gives you a massive sense of freedom because your happiness isn't tied to how other people act anymore. You stop taking things personally, and honestly, when you stop taking things personally, you cut out one of the biggest reasons people suffer for no reason. If you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button and let me know your thoughts. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. At this stage, your energy becomes incredibly sharp and focused. It's no longer spread thin across a million different reactions, long explanations, or pointless arguments. You aren't burning through your mental battery by overthinking every single conversation you have. You aren't wasting your emotional strength on fights that don't matter, and you aren't losing your way by trying to control what other people think of you. Instead, you take all that extra energy and point it straight at your own growth, your own habits, and your own goals. This leads to a level of success that most people never get to see. It's not because they aren't smart enough, but because they are always distracted by things that just don't matter in the long run. But here is the crazy part you might not expect. You'll start to see that your very presence changes how people act when they are around you. When you are quiet, in control, and impossible to rattle, people can feel that energy. They might not be able to explain it, but they know deep down that you aren't someone who can be pushed around or tricked. This builds a natural kind of respect that you never have to ask for or explain. It just comes from how you carry yourself and how consistent you are. People start thinking twice before they try to test your boundaries. It's not because you said something mean, but because your silence has already told them everything they need to know. Make sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part. As you keep living this way, you realize that real power isn't about bossing other people around. It's about mastering yourself so well that nothing on the outside can mess with your head on the inside. You aren't chasing after control over every situation anymore. Instead, you are holding on to control over how you react to those situations. This one shift changes your entire reality. Once you own your response, you own your experience. And once you own your experience, you are finally the boss of your own life. The big realization at this level is simple, but it hits hard. Most things in life don't actually need your reaction or any response at all. Most problems will just blow over whether you get involved or not. Most opinions will disappear whether you argue with them or not. Most people are going to think whatever they want to think, no matter what you say to them. Once you really get this, you stop wasting your life trying to manage things you can't control. You put 100% of your focus on the one thing you can control, which is yourself. This is the peak of a silent mind. It's a place where you aren't driven by a need to prove yourself or explain your choices. You move through the world with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be shouted. You have a strength that doesn't need to be shown off. In this state, you become something rare, someone who is truly in charge of their own mind and their own path. You finally understand that the second you stopped trying to prove how strong you were was the exact moment you actually became strong. Now wait until you hear this next part. Chapter 9, Absolute Detachment, when nothing owns you anymore. Imagine reaching a level of inner freedom that feels almost impossible to most people. It isn't because this state is out of reach, but because it asks you to drop the things people cling to most tightly. I'm talking about that constant need to control everything, the hunger for validation, and the search for emotional safety in the outside world. This stage is called absolute detachment, but don't get it wrong, it isn't about running away from life. It's about making sure life no longer owns you. It is that specific moment when your mind becomes so steady and clear that nothing outside of you can ruin your mood unless you give it permission. If you're finding this helpful so far, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. But here is the crazy part. Most people are living in a trap of attachment without even knowing it. They are glued to other people, to specific results, to what others think, and to the rigid idea that life must go a certain way. When those expectations fall through, they suffer. When people don't act the way they want, they explode or shut down. When things don't go as planned, they feel crushed by anger or disappointment. Their entire happiness is hooked onto things they can't actually control, which is why their peace of mind is always shaking. Now this is where it gets interesting. When you finally step into absolute detachment, you start seeing a completely different reality. You realize that holding on too tight is the root of all your unnecessary pain, and letting go is where your real power actually starts. Now, before we go further, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this journey. Being detached doesn't mean you stop caring about the world. It just means you stop clinging to it. You can still love people deeply, work hard toward your big goals, and stay active in your life, but you do it without tying your inner peace to the final result. You put in the work, but you release the desperate need for things to turn out a specific way. You connect with others, but you don't depend on them to keep you emotionally stable. This creates a perfect balance that most people never get to feel because they are usually either obsessed with an outcome or totally checked out. A quiet mind finds that middle path where you are fully into the game but never controlled by the score. Wait until you hear how this changes your reaction to loss or rejection. Before this shift, those experiences would probably wreck you because they felt so personal. It felt like a piece of you was being stolen. But now, You see them through a different lens. You see them as natural parts of the human experience, not as things that define your value or your future. You finally accept that people will come and go, situations will shift, and nothing is ever 100% guaranteed. Instead of fighting against this truth, you embrace it. This simple acceptance takes the heavy emotional weight off your shoulders, letting you move forward without dragging a suitcase full of old pain behind you. There is another huge benefit to this. You become bulletproof to both praise and insults. Most people are like puppets on a string, feeling high when they get a compliment and low when someone talks trash. This creates a constant dependency on what others say. But when you are truly detached, both the cheers and the boos lose their grip. You don't get an ego from a compliment, and you don't get depressed by a mean comment. You see both as temporary moments that say more about the other person than they do about you. This builds a level of strength that is hard to break, because your worth isn't up for debate. Your focus gets sharper because your brain isn't busy worrying about how you look or overthinking every little interaction. You stop reacting to things that just don't matter. This mental clarity lets you point your energy exactly where it needs to go, focusing only on things that actually help you grow and reach your goals. You start getting more done, staying more disciplined, and being more consistent because your brain isn't being dragged around by emotional noise or drama. But here's the crazy part. Detachment actually flips the way you look at success. Most people are out there chasing wins just to prove they are good enough or to get likes from others. If you're finding this helpful so far, definitely smash that like button. When you are detached, you don't chase success to find your identity. You chase it because you want to see how far you can grow. You show up and put in the hard work, but your value as a person doesn't change. This takes all that heavy pressure off your shoulders. It lets you perform at your best, think with a sharp mind, and stay on track even when things go wrong or people expect too much from you. Now this is where it gets really interesting. As your detachment gets stronger, your inner world becomes incredibly steady. It's like you're a rock that isn't moved by the waves of the world. Your feelings stay balanced, your thoughts stay sharp, and every move you make is on purpose, no matter what's falling apart around you. You aren't forcing this stability through willpower, it's just something that happens naturally. You start feeling a deep sense of peace that doesn't depend on having a good day. It's a peace that lives inside you simply because you've stopped fighting against reality. Hit subscribe and tap the bell right now so you don't miss the next part of this journey. Believe it or not, the people in your life are going to notice this shift, even if they can't quite put their finger on what's different. They'll see that you don't get rattled easily and that you don't blow up or react the way everyone else does. You move through tough situations with a rare kind of calmness. Some people will look up to you for it, while others might get confused or even feel a bit awkward around you. That's usually because people are used to connecting through shared stress or drama, and you aren't playing that game anymore. But none of that bothers you because you aren't looking for their approval. Your only job is keeping your own inner balance. This level of detachment gives you a special kind of freedom. You get the freedom to make big choices without being paralyzed by fear, the freedom to walk away from things that hurt you, and the freedom to follow your own path without worrying about what society thinks. You aren't scared of losing things anymore because you realize that nothing in this world is permanent anyway. Everything comes and goes, and once you accept that truth, you can move forward without hesitation. The deeper you go, the more you see that true control isn't about bossing the world around. It's about letting go of the need to control it at all. Once you stop fighting life, you start flowing with it. This makes everything feel easier, not because life is perfect, but because you've stopped resisting what's happening. You just adapt, adjust, and keep moving. At the highest level, you stop letting temporary things define you. Success, failure, praise, or insults. None of it changes the core of who you are. This is where real freedom lives. Which part of this hit home for you? Drop it in the comments below. This is what true detachment looks like. It isn't about being cold or acting like you don't care. It's about finding a powerful, balanced, and deeply controlled way to live your life. It's that exact point where nothing owns you anymore, not the people around you, not the results of your work, not the opinions of strangers, and certainly not the situations you find yourself in. You are still fully living and engaged, but you are finally free from its grip. And once you reach this level, you realize something that most people never quite figure out. The very moment you stopped trying to hold on to everything was the moment you actually gained control over everything that truly matters. But here is the crazy part. This is where your real transformation begins. Chapter 10. The return to self when you become untouchable from within. There comes a specific moment in your journey where everything you have been practicing starts to click. Every time you chose silence, every time you controlled a wild reaction, every explanation you decided not to give, and every response you avoided, it all starts to come together. These aren't just separate skills anymore. They turn into a completely new way of being. If you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button and let me know you're with me. This shift isn't loud or dramatic, and it doesn't shout for attention, but it is powerful enough to change how you experience life from the inside out. It is the moment you finally return to yourself, not the version of you shaped by other people or by expectations and emotional outbursts, but the version that exists underneath all that noise, the one that is calm, clear, and totally in control. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Most people spend their entire lives moving further away from themselves without even knowing it. They change who they are to please others. They react in certain ways just to fit into a situation. They explain themselves over and over just to feel understood. Over time, they lose that connection with their own inner strength. Their identity gets tied up in how others see them, how things turn out, and how they are treated by the world. This creates a very fragile version of yourself because it's always being pushed around by things you can't control. But when you start to master silence, when you stop reacting, stop explaining, and stop giving energy to things that don't need it, you slowly peel away all those outside layers. What's left behind is something much more stable and way more powerful. You won't believe how much lighter you feel when this happens. Returning to yourself isn't about turning into someone new. It's about getting rid of everything that was never really you in the first place. It's about letting go of the old habits, the patterns, and the emotional needs that you built up over the years. You are reconnecting with a state of clarity. It was always there, just buried under a mountain of noise. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this journey. This clarity is what lets you walk through life without being pulled in a million different directions. Your center isn't out there anymore, it's inside you. You aren't constantly adjusting who you are based on what's happening around you. Instead, you move from a place that stays steady no matter what. But here's the most beautiful part of this shift: the disappearance of emotional urgency. Think back to how it used to feel. Everything felt like an emergency. You felt like you had to reply right away, defend your honor, react to every insult, or prove your worth. Your mind was always pushing you to act or say something, as if every tiny moment needed your immediate attention. But now, that frantic urgency just fades away. In its place, you find a deep sense of patience. You start to see that not everything needs to be handled this second. You realize that most situations actually fix themselves without you jumping in, and that acting from a place of calm is 1,000 times more effective than acting on impulse. This patience is your new superpower. Because your emotions aren't rushing you anymore, you also notice a huge change in how you deal with people. You no longer feel that desperate need to be liked by everyone, understood by everyone, or accepted by every group you encounter. You realize that how people see you is really just a reflection of who they are, and you finally stop trying to change their minds. This lifts a massive weight off your shoulders because you're no longer putting on a show for a crowd, you're just being yourself. In that honesty, you find a new kind of strength. Your sense of self doesn't depend on others, which makes you incredibly steady. If you're finding this helpful, go ahead and smash that like button so more people can find this piece. As you stay in this headspace, your mind gets remarkably quiet. It's not that your head is empty, but it is finally clear. Thoughts and feelings still pop up, but they don't take the wheel anymore. You just watch them, understand why they're there, and let them drift away without getting caught up in the drama. This creates a deep inner peace that isn't fragile. It doesn't break when things go wrong because it isn't based on what's happening around you. It's a peace that exists because your mind isn't fighting itself anymore. You've stopped reacting to every little thing and stopped trying to force things you can't control. But here is the crazy part. Your daily actions start to change in small but very powerful ways. You become more purposeful and focused. You're no longer moving on autopilot or acting out of a bad mood. You're acting with total awareness. When you talk, your words actually mean something because they aren't just impulsive reactions. When you stay quiet, it's not because you're shy, but because you chose not to speak. This level of self-mastery makes your entire vibe feel different to other people. You feel grounded and solid, like someone who can't be easily pushed around. By the way, if you want to keep leveling up your mindset, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Now this is where it gets really interesting. People around you are going to notice this change, even if they can't quite put their finger on it. They'll see that you don't get triggered easily and that you don't freak out the way everyone else does. In a world of noise, your calmness stands out. Some people will respect you for it, some will wonder how you do it, and some might even feel awkward around you. Your stability highlights the fact that they don't have control over themselves. But honestly, none of that bothers you anymore. Your focus has shifted away from their opinions and onto your own internal state. At this stage, you build a massive amount of self-trust. You've proven to yourself that you can stay cool under pressure and handle hard times without falling apart. This trust becomes your new foundation. You know that no matter what life throws at you, you won't break or lose your mind. This is what it really means to be untouchable. It doesn't mean bad things stop happening. It means those things no longer have the power to ruin your inner world. You won't believe what happens next, but the biggest realization you'll have is that control was never about managing life. It was always about managing your response to life. Once you get that down, everything flips. Your happiness isn't at the mercy of outside events anymore. It's decided by you. You start to see that strength and clarity were never things you had to go out and find. They were always inside you. This is the moment you truly return to yourself. You aren't divided or constantly explaining yourself to others. You are whole, you are right here in the moment, and you are finally in charge. You move through the world with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be proven or shown off. It's just there, a deep peace that belongs only to you. Which part of this shift sounds the most life-changing to you? Drop a comment below and let me know. Once you finally reach this point, you realize a truth that flips your entire world upside down. You see that being truly untouchable was never about giant walls. It was actually about building a mind so strong and steady that nothing on this planet could ever break it. But here is where it gets really interesting. We are moving into a phase called effortless power, where control isn't a chore anymore, it's just your nature. There's a specific moment in this growth where everything you used to practice with so much focus starts to change. It stops being a struggle and starts being automatic. You don't have to force yourself to be disciplined or pay constant attention to your behavior like you did at the start. This is the level of effortless power. It's a state where silence isn't something you have to squeeze out of yourself. Staying in control isn't a fight you're trying to win every day. Discipline isn't a sticky note you have to keep on your mirror to remind yourself how to act. Instead, it just becomes who you are. It's the way you think, the way you react to people, and the way you walk through life without needing to constantly fix your own mistakes. If you're finding this helpful and want to see more steps on this journey, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part. Now, think back to the beginning. Everything felt so hard, didn't it? You had to constantly tell yourself not to snap back at people. You had to physically stop yourself from over-explaining your choices. You had to choose silence on purpose, even when your old habits were screaming at you to say something. It felt weird and uncomfortable because your brain was trained for years to be reactive. Your mind wanted to jump in fast, defend your honor, and prove everyone wrong. Breaking that old cycle takes a lot of work. But here's the crazy part. As you keep going, the heavy lifting starts to disappear. The hard work begins to fade, and staying in control starts to feel as easy as breathing. This happens because you are literally rewiring your brain through repetition. Every single time you chose silence instead of a blow-up, every time you stayed still instead of acting on a whim, and every time you stayed aware instead of going on autopilot, you were building a brand new path in your head. Eventually, this path becomes your default setting. What used to be a struggle is now totally effortless. You don't have to give yourself a pep talk to stay calm, because getting upset isn't your first instinct anymore. You don't feel that itchy need to explain yourself, because your mind finally knows that your stability doesn't depend on what others think. This is where real power lives. It's not about controlling yourself once in a while, it's about control becoming your natural state. At this stage, your mind works from a place of quiet awareness rather than a place of panic or rush. Things that used to ruin your whole day don't even move the needle now. It's not because you're hiding your feelings, but because the way you see the world has shifted. You don't see attacks on your ego, you just see them as events that don't need your energy. But you won't believe what happens next. The internal war inside you finally stops. Before this, you probably felt a constant battle between how you felt and how you wanted to act. You might have felt boiling anger while trying to look cool, or a desperate need to talk while trying to stay quiet. That created so much stress. But now, that tension just melts away. Your feelings and your actions finally line up. You naturally feel less reactive, you naturally feel less need to talk, and you naturally pick silence. This alignment brings a deep sense of peace, because you are finally done fighting yourself. Your energy starts to feel much more steady during this phase, because you aren't throwing it away on pointless thoughts or overreacting to every little thing. Think about how it used to be. One bad moment could ruin your entire day, or even your whole week, because you'd keep replaying it in your head over and over. You would analyze every word and get angry all over again. But now, things just float through your mind without weighing you down. You see what's happening and let it go. This keeps your battery full and your focus sharp for the stuff that actually matters in your life. If you're finding this helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. it really helps the channel. But here is where it gets really interesting. As this feeling gets stronger, your entire vibe changes, and people will definitely start to notice. You don't have that nervous, jumpy energy anymore. You aren't someone who is always trying to prove a point or fighting to be heard. Instead, you have this calm, solid presence that feels totally under control. People might not be able to put their finger on exactly what changed, but they'll see you aren't like everyone else. You don't get triggered by the drama that upsets most people, and you aren't easily pushed around by other people's opinions. This creates a natural kind of respect. You don't have to act tough because your silence and stability show your strength for you. Now, this is where things take a turn. At this level, your relationship with time and patience completely transforms. You no longer feel that frantic need to hurry up and answer, or that pressure to act right this second. You finally get that things happen when they're supposed to happen, and you're totally fine letting life unfold without trying to force it. This kind of patience helps you make way better choices. You aren't making moves because you're stressed or rushed. You're making them because you have total clarity, and when you see things clearly, you win more often. Make sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell icon so you don't miss the next part of this journey. You won't believe how much easier challenges become once you reach this stage. In the past, a big problem would have stressed you out. Now, a challenge is just a task to be finished. You look at it calmly, figure out the best move, and act with purpose. Because your brain isn't clouded by panic, you actually become much more effective at solving problems. Being able to think straight while everyone else is losing their cool becomes your biggest superpower. But here is the crazy part that happens at the deepest level. You stop trying to control everything on purpose because control has just become part of who you are. You trust yourself 100%. You know you'll stay calm and handle whatever life throws at you. This trust means you don't have to work hard at it anymore. You aren't trying to stay in control, you are just living that way. This is the real meaning of effortless power. It's not that you've stopped being disciplined, it's that you've mastered yourself so well that it's now your natural state. Silence isn't a chore, and your emotions don't run the show anymore. You've let go of the old habits that were holding you back. You finally realize the goal wasn't to force yourself to be better, but to practice until being better is just your nature. You aren't trying anymore. Chapter 12. The Final Truth. Nothing outside of you was ever in control. Once you've gone through all the lessons and put in the work, you reach a point where a deep truth starts to show itself. It isn't just some fancy idea or a concept you read in a book. It's something you can feel with total clarity. This is the big realization that changes everything. Nothing outside of you was ever really in charge of your life, your happiness, or your peace of mind. For such a long time, it probably felt like the exact opposite was true. It felt powerful. It felt like other people, tough situations, and random events had all the power to decide how you felt and how you saw the world. But as you start to pay closer attention, you see that this was never actually the truth. It was just how you perceived things, and that view was built on old habits and reactions you didn't even know you had. If you're finding this helpful, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. But here is the crazy part. Since you were a kid, you were taught that your feelings are just a reaction. If people are nice to you, you're supposed to feel good. If someone is rude, you're supposed to feel bad. When things go your way, you're happy, and when they don't, you're frustrated. This way of living becomes so normal that you never even think to question it. You just accept that your inner world depends on your outer world. But the real truth is way more powerful than that. You aren't actually experiencing the world itself. You are experiencing your own personal version of it. You have way more control over that version than anyone ever told you. The second you get this, life shifts. You see that it wasn't the situation that upset you, but how you reacted to it. It wasn't someone's mean opinion that hurt you, but the importance you gave to their words. It wasn't the delay or the failure that caused the pain, but the story your mind told you about it. Now this is where it gets really interesting. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy or that your problems just vanish into thin air. It means your relationship with those problems changes completely because you no longer see them as things that can boss you around. A calm mind sees this clearly. Because it sees the truth, it doesn't react the same way anymore. It understands that reacting without thinking is what makes it look like the outside world is in control. Every time you react without being aware, you just prove to yourself that something else has power over you. But when you stop, watch what's happening, and choose how to respond, you break that spell. You start to see that you never actually lost your power. You were just giving it away without realizing it. Make sure to subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming deep dives into this. You won't believe what happens next as you sit with this. This isn't about ignoring your feelings or acting like nothing matters. It's about realizing that emotions are things happening inside you, not forces attacking you from the outside. You feel them and watch them, but you don't let them drive the car. This creates a bit of space between you and your feelings. In that space, you find your awareness, and that's where you take back control. This is where real freedom starts. It's not about changing the world around you, but about changing how you deal with it. As you understand this more, something even bigger happens. You stop trying to control everything. Most people spend their whole lives trying to force outcomes and change people because they think that's the only way to be happy. But the more they try to grab control, the more stressed they get, because life almost never goes exactly according to plan. A silent mind understands that while you can't always change what happens around you, you have total power over what happens inside of you. Instead of constantly fighting against reality, you start to move with it. You adapt without pushing back. Wait until you hear how much easier life becomes when you stop resisting. This alignment creates a deep sense of ease that's hard to put into words, but it's incredibly powerful once you feel it for yourself. You aren't in a constant battle with your day anymore. You stop getting angry at every little inconvenience and quit reacting to every tiny change that doesn't go your way. Instead, you flow with life. By doing this, you save so much energy, keep your head clear, and stay steady no matter what. If you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button. Now don't get it twisted. This doesn't make you lazy or passive. It actually makes you much more precise. Your choices aren't being pushed by sudden emotions or panic anymore. They are fueled by clear, calm intention. But here is where things get really interesting. At this level, the way you see yourself completely transforms. You stop defining who you are based on your wins or your losses. You don't care as much about praise or criticism, and you stop worrying about how other people see you. You start to realize that all those things are just temporary. They change every day. They don't actually reflect the real you. Your identity starts to grow roots in something much deeper and more stable. It's a part of you that doesn't shift just because your circumstances changed. This builds a kind of inner security that nobody can take away from you because it doesn't depend on anything outside of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this journey, because it only gets deeper from here. At this stage, your silence starts to mean something totally different. It's not just a trick anymore. It becomes a mirror of your new understanding. You don't feel the need to talk just to fill the air because you can see exactly what matters and what's just noise. You don't feel the need to jump into every argument because you understand how reactions work. You don't even feel the need to explain yourself anymore because you've stopped trying to manage everyone else's opinion of you. Your silence becomes natural and effortless. It's powerful because it comes from being aware, not from forcing yourself to be quiet. Now, you won't believe how much simpler life feels when you live this way. It's not that life itself gets easier or less messy, but you stop making it complicated with your own expectations and attachments. You handle tough situations with a clear mind and move through challenges without falling apart. This simplicity isn't a sign of weakness, it's actually total mastery. It comes from knowing what is truly important and having the strength to let go of everything else. The big realization at the end of this path is both simple and life-changing. The power you were looking for was never out there in the world. It was always inside you, just waiting for you. You were never actually a victim of people or situations. You were only ever held back by your own reactions to them. Once you take ownership of those reactions and choose them on purpose, every single thing changes. This is the ultimate truth. It's not a lesson you learn once, but something you keep practicing forever. Your inner world is your kingdom, and true control isn't about force. It's about awareness. When you live like this, you never feel powerless again. You've reached a level of freedom most people can't imagine because you stopped trying to fix the world. Which part of this hit home for you? Drop it in the comments below. Your silence starts to feel like your greatest strength. Your awareness turns into a steady guide, and your self-control becomes the solid ground you stand on. Once you truly get this, you'll realize something that shifts your entire world forever. Nothing outside of you ever really had power over you until you handed it over. The exact second you stopped giving that power away was the second you finally became free. If you're feeling that shift already, hit the subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss. By the end of this process, your outside life might look pretty much the same, but everything inside you has changed in a way that can't be undone. You aren't moving through the world anymore as someone who just reacts to every little thing, explains yourself to everyone you meet, or answers every situation like your happiness depends on it. Instead, you've stepped into a totally different way of existing. Your mind is calm, your feelings are under your command, and every move you make is on purpose. This isn't just a mood, it's a total change in how you live. But here's the crazy part. You finally see that every time you lashed out, you were throwing your power away. Every time you gave a long explanation you didn't need to give, you were showing how much you needed someone else to tell you that you were right. Every time you acted without thinking, you let control slip right through your fingers. Now, you've learned that you can change all of that. You aren't just forcing yourself to be quiet. You're finally understanding why being quiet is so powerful to begin with. You see clearly now that your peace was never supposed to depend. It was always meant to come from inside you. These ideas are simple, but the way they change you goes deep. You stop for a second instead of just